really the most buzzworthy guy has been Alex Orji. And throughout this offseason, it's felt like they're kind of grooming him, at least publicly, to sort of be that guy. Or I shouldn't even say that. He's the one that's been most visible. I think he's the one that has the most sort of maybe tantalizing skill set, if you want to put it that way. So, I want to start with him. Alex Orji in both, he's intriguing because it's not just a one-year flyer. If he winds up starting this season, he does have, the 2 years of eligibility left. So this could be your starting quarterback into 2025 if things hit the right way, or he could just be a stopgap to Jaden Davis, who we talk about in a little bit. But, I don't know. I don't quite know where to start with him. The thing I'll say with Alex Orji is that, again, everything that I don't want to say needed to see, but everything was on display for him when we got that glimpse of him in the spring game. He went 13 for 18 for 108 yards, had 5 rushes for 19 yards and a touchdown. Right now, his running ability is going to be the calling card, but this is a guy that I think, we just need to see him. They just need to see him pass the ball more, because I don't think you get the evaluation of what he is or what he can bring to the table until he has that type of volume, which he hasn't had to this point. Now, there are people that are concerned with his accuracy. He barely completed more than 50% of his passes in high school. And there's a lot of debate as to whether that is a trait or it's something that's just inherent. It's something that can be trained. I think a lot of with him comes down to his mechanics, and there's a lot to sort of process here with him. But let's just maybe look at the short-term outlook with Alex Orji heading into this camp. I don't know if it's what do you need to see from him, but how does this guy win this job? Is it simply the promise of what he could be? Is it the ability to execute the offense? Is it just simply the running ability and they'll deal with everything else? Where do you see him kind of fitting into this quarterback situation as, the guy that we think is the favorite to have this job?
Yeah, I mean, one, he actually has 3 years of eligibility remaining too, so he could be your quarterback for the next 3 years as he enters his redshirt sophomore year, which is kind of, something that's exciting a little bit, the fact that he's in the mix right now. And, he's not necessarily the type of player, at least right now, that the NFL is completely looking for. So if it does work out this year with Alex Orji, you're looking at a potential long-term play here. And, one, I think I love the mindset he has. I know we talked about it after, he talked at Will Johnson's camp a week and a half ago, but I mean, he just has kind of the makings between the ears of, really just what you would expect out of a Michigan future captain at some point, a leader on Michigan's team, talking about how he, necessarily isn't here to be a starter. Like, he committed to the University of Michigan to be on the team and to be a leader and, to help the team win in any way that he can, not just be the starter. Now, doesn't mean he's not trying to go out and win the job. And yeah, I think he's right there in terms of how I would handicap it. I think that it's going to come down to fall camp. I wonder if it goes into the season, which wouldn't necessarily be the best thing because you do have some tough games early on. But yeah, I mean, I think that he is somebody that does at least one thing very well, and that's running the football. And clearly you can do things off of that. And it's not like he can't pass at all. We just haven't seen him do that in games much yet. He's only attempted 1 pass in his career. So that's the part that I think is a concern a little bit. But you look at it, and I think the reason why he has a good chance is because he has that running element to him. You can build an offense around him. It'll look a lot different than it would if you had somebody else behind center like Jack Tuttle or Davis Warren, who we'll talk about in a second. But there's kind of something there. So it's intriguing. Some good, some bad in the spring game. And the second thing is, as we talked about after the spring game, we didn't get to see his full skill set on display because he wasn't live. And when he's live, I think that suits him better than when he's not live, which doesn't go for most quarterbacks, but it's certainly the case with him. So, he's a guy that I think you could have a successful offense around. I just don't know enough about how he is as a passer to be definite on, what my expectations are for him.
Yeah, I think part of it too is you need him to, all progression's not linear. Like, yes, there's a leadership void to fill without JJ McCarthy there, but at the same time, you need to tailor your offense around the best version of all of your players. So to me, it's not that, well, JJ completed X amount of passes, so that's the level that Alex Orji needs to get to. I mean, I think for him, I think they just need him to progress to a point where he's good enough to add a dimension where, they do have to respect his talent throwing the ball. And I think he has arm talent. I mean, when you watch him throw the ball in warmups, I mean, the guy can rip it, can throw a pigskin a quarter mile, quote Uncle Rico. It's just one of those things where, we saw kind of the good or the good and the bad of it in the spring game. Like when he's on time, when the ball's where it's supposed to be, like it looks functional. It looks like it's something they can build around. But I think his mechanics are still just a little bit sloppy. Obviously, the QB run game was never really a threat with JJ McCarthy, as much as we wanted them to add that dimension to their offense. And I think there is something to, maybe leaving a little bit of potential with him on the table in that regard. But, with Alex Orji, I mean, it's going to be, I think you will see some true QB runs built into the offense. It has to be if he's out there, even if he's not the starting quarterback. I mean, that's going to be his bread and butter. But, for me, it's all about getting him to a point where Michigan is tough to defend. And, being that he does have a different skill set from some of the guys that they've started back there, I just think it's, how do you use his skill set to make a defense think maybe just even a split second longer or think a little bit differently? Because, that moment of hesitation that, depending on what your play call could be, that's what opens things up. That could open up a whole world of possibilities for them. So, again, I think that it's intriguing. Like he could get to a level where he could be their quarterback the next 2 years, potentially the next 3 years. I mean, who's to say? But at this point, we're going to have to see a lot for him to get to that point. Because I do think a guy like Jaden Davis, who again, we'll save him for last as a freshman. But I do think that he is probably your quarterback of the future, at least right now. I mean, we'll see what happens come next year if they dip into the portal, and obviously Carter Smith will be coming in and all that. But Alex Orji, to me, I mean, like I said, when it went right for him in the spring game, I mean, you could see what the vision is, and it could be open up a world of opportunity for him to rack up some running yards, for Donovan Edwards, Khalil Mullings to rack up some rushing yards. I think that they're built to have an efficient passing game over the middle of the field, which could be a nice little safety valve thing for him. But yeah, I mean, that's it for me. It's less about getting him to complete 65% of his passes and more about how do they get him to a point where he does enough to where defenses have to respect it.
Yeah, and it's tough to say exactly too, because I thought that, some of the passes he completed were, just shorter passes, a lot of stuff. I thought the tight ends were really involved, especially when, really when any quarterback was in the game. I know they, there were a couple deep shots, and one of them to Kendrick Bell from Davis Warren, but that was, against, it was a great play, but, it was against a lot of walk-on defensive backs. So again, it's like, do we just don't know what he is throwing down the field? He did make, I thought, a poor decision. I think double or triple coverage. You can tell he's working on his footwork, although, he seemed to bail out of the pocket a couple times a little bit early. So it's still just not there and polished yet. And I think the game experience could help that. Like if they decide that this is the guy and you roll with him, Alabama kind of did that last year with Jalen Milroe, a guy who people make a lot of comparisons to with Orji, including Jim Harbaugh. And Alex Orji said he watched Jalen Milroe throughout the season as well and tried to kind of emulate him a little bit. I will say Milroe seems to have a little bit more of a natural throwing motion than Orji. So, like Orji is a little bit different in terms of how he throws it. But again, game experience could help him if they can kind of build an offense around him running the football, and then he can make the passes he needs to make. Like you said, I mean, that would be pretty tough to defend, and he's durable too. I think that's why they didn't run JJ as much, is because, I mean, it seemed like every time he took a pretty big hit, he was kind of limping around, and obviously he got hurt late in the year and almost cost them, and he was able to get healthy enough for the Ohio State game. But Alex Orji is a guy that's durable. Obviously he hasn't had a big sample size, but you can see it. He doesn't take the big hits. He's delivering a lot of them. So that's he. If he's in the game, they're going to be running the football quite a bit with him and other guys too.
And the one thing I'll say, just because from an overarching perspective with all these guys is that I think it does help from a development perspective that one, you're not only going up against a Michigan defense every day that has the talent on it that it does, but I mean, Sherrone Moore and Kirk Campbell are telling Wake Martindale, throw the kitchen sink at these guys. Like they need to see everything. And if it comes with struggles early on, so be it. But I think that's a benefit to them. I mean, certainly a benefit to guys like Davis, guys like Orji, who could be here for a few years. But I really think that's a bit of a, it's kind of a sink or swim aspect to that as well.